Well, welcome back to Point Blank. We're on a roll here tonight about how local companies can fight back when the going gets tough. Let's take a quick look at what people have been saying online. One of the comments that we have seen on StraitsTimes.com's discussion board is actually a comparison of the Eastern and Western styles of management. Okay, let's take a look at what Ethan Chia said. That he never did trust a local bank who used an American style of management. It has proven the American style is not working in the post-internet boom world. And we're always back to the issue of DBS. And if the DBS CEO has got some heart, he should follow UBS CEO example. Forfeit his pay and, take a pay cut and all that. And as a sign of regret. They are not in the red and yet they're retrenched. It really deals a big blow to Singapore's ambition to be an Asian banking hub. Okay, at issue, what we're taking issue with here are two things. One, East versus West. Okay, we know that the Asian values debate has been going on for some time versus the hawks of the West, where we retrench without blinking. So is that necessarily the truth of what we're seeing here, or is there such a cultural divide, you think, from HR?
And do you guys feel that the Eastern or Western approach might be more applicable or even ideal for companies here in Singapore?
Well, in business, you have to survive. Now, in the Singapore context, we do have a good working relationship with the bosses, employers, the union, as well as government. And because we are small, and because we are also a melting pot of multinational, local big boys, SME, there will certainly be a mix of West and Eastern culture within the organization that we have. And in a globalized economy, if you have MNC having offices all over the place, certain HQ policy would probably permeate to wherever you are, whether it's in the Western world or in the Eastern world. But having said that, I think Singapore would like to evolve a blend of these practices, because I think if you really need to rationalize your business, if certain business sectors are not doing well and you have excess staff, then you have to do something about it. That is the cold hard fact. But the way to execute this could be different, from say a Western boss, for that matter. But some Western people are also quite, are quite concerned and humane in their approach as well. But generally speaking, we want to encourage, that people is at the heart of every operation.
So you reckon?
Can we then, do that?
Do you reckon that this East-West divide is something that is true? Does it even exist, or are people just trying to, split hairs?
I think to be fair, to the comments about the DBS boss as well as the American boss and local banks versus a foreign bank, banks today are in serious trouble. And like what Edwin said, you have to take some action, or seems to have some action to answer to your shareholders. That's correct. And the PR aspect is very important, how you manage this sort of situation. But the communications and the PR internally, from management to HR as an executor to even the operational people, they must be together in helping to communicate the reason why certain thing is to be done and find a fair way of dealing with cuts, even if they have to take it. And I can understand, in the past few years we have investment managers, investment relationship managers and so on, and wealth managers. Today we ask ourselves, where are the wealth to be managed? And so you have this group of people in the office. Of course, one way is to see whether they can be deployed, to other areas, because they've been working in the bank and they have good performance. One way is to retrain them to other area. But if the other areas are also suffering, the effect of having excess people, then there is no other reason to say that there must be across the organization, across the function, across the level, some form of reduction. And I think it's important to pick on the point of performance. Good staff you want to keep. People with skill you want to keep. And then what is the measure to do that? So you must have a good performance appraisal, performance management system in order to say that, you have this skill, you have this talent, you have this contribution, we keep you.
That's right. Like Edwin was saying, that you don't want to accidentally lose good staff while just cutting pay and, and not realize it. Well, and which brings us to the other point on the internet, another comment on the internet, the question of, who should be retrenched? Is it necessarily just a PR exercise, or is it actually even a viable business option that cost-cutting measures should start from the top? That what M. Shen on SD Discussion Board has said is that many people in the top notch are in the dealing room enjoying generous bonuses over the years. We have top management people in the living room. We haven't heard of any senior managers volunteering or even suggesting to take a pay cut for a start. So
I think there are such cases.
Yeah?
There are senior management who, for one reason or another, decided to call it a day because, they have less commitment and they feel they have worked long enough, 30 years in an organization. And if the company were to come up with some package that is attractive enough, senior management would volunteer for that. So there are many approach, the formal way and the informal way of encouraging, call it excess staff in the organization to take leave. And it could be a golden handshake. It could be, half-time, come back as a consultant, providing this sort of services, come back as a mentoring role. Now, these are possibilities. And we can safely say that if you are not profitable, bonuses is not going to be that big at all.
Or at all,
At all. So it is not that a group of people in an organization will continue to receive good bonuses and so on. Well, I do agree that senior management should, take an example, relative to the low-income people. Now, $10 to a low-income is a lot. $1,000 to someone who's earning that may not appear to be that a lot at all. So yes, if we can exercise, a sense of reasonableness, justice, compassion, I think the whole workforce will just pull along with you.
I think just on that point about the Western-Eastern divide as well, I mean, maybe in the past, I think that the American way, especially the American way, you can't argue with it. I think the biggest companies in the world are American companies, Microsoft and Nikes and all that. You can't argue the way they've operated and how they've made their money. But I think with the collapse of Lehman Brothers and the talk about how former CEOs who get sacked get the big payoffs and stuff like that, and that's no longer going to be the case from now onwards, I think that's the right practice as well. I mean, if you led a company to failure, you shouldn't be entitled to a big payoff as well. I think that's a great practice. Should senior management take a pay cut first and all that? I think that if you're going to have a pay cut across the board, yes, I think the senior management should take a pay cut as well. If that's going to be a result that you take. But I don't think it should be senior management first and then everybody else later. I mean, I don't know if this is a good HR practice, but if you were to cut a percentage across the board, say by 10% or 15%, then do it from top all the way to the smaller staff. I think that's probably the way to look at it. So everybody feels a pinch, at the end of the day. But like I said, if you ask me, is there really a Eastern and Western divide? I think I tend to agree with David. I think with globalization, it's getting less and less. I think big companies in Singapore, who are not MNCs but big corporations, go through retrenchment exercise as heartlessly as any American organization as well. So I don't know if in today's world is it really that stark a divide. I read the article that you're talking about. Maybe 5 years ago, I would say that probably was more pronounced. I'm not sure it's that pronounced today.
And with globalization, I think it's true to say that margin, that difference is slowly narrowing because, people are just adopting best practices, period, whether East or West or whether it's American or Singaporean.
Yeah, and this is also to add to the fact that, even Asian companies, they have like Western CEOs on their board.
We also see an increasing trend of company trying to help these retrenched people sort of manage the transition. The transition can be quite painful. Especially if you are PMET, the professional, the managers and the executives and so on. If they lose a job, they lose a huge sum of income per month. And if they are the sole breadwinner, children, then it is situations where, we have to help them manage the emotion. In the financial crisis, I have people, professionals, executives, managers, who will still put on their tie, the coat, carry their bag, and go out of the office, go out of the home, without telling the family members that they are out of job and lost their job. They will then come to us SHRI or to SPEC, SPEC, which help these people manage this sort of situation. And we help them in a lot of ways. And I think professional bodies and cooperative like the SPEC that we mentioned about can serve as a running point, a harbor of sort. And I always like to, equate human being as ships, small ship, big ship, tankers. And they are out there to fight the gales, the weather, And what do? If they fought a battle out there through recession, acquisition, and so on? They will sail into the harbor. And like all ships in a harbor, there are various areas of services. You can refresh them, put in fresh water, give them skill upgrading, clean the bottom of the ships, And when they are all ready, go out again to fight another battle. So we need, in this difficult time, a refuge or reference point where these retrenched people can come and sought advice and not be left alone.
That's right.
And the guidelines in some way is one part of it, which is to encourage company to keep the people, save jobs, keep them longer, train them. But what about those who are out? Have we got enough muscles, financial means to help this group of people? Training is one part of it. But what about the mindset change? The building up the resiliency of this group of people. Give them the confidence again. And then point them the way to areas of opportunities and so on. To let them...
That's right. With the publication of the guidelines, all this is all geared towards, building up resilience, not only in terms of as a nation, but Singaporeans as individuals, where we, have the ability to fend, to be able to manage a time of crisis as a nation and as individuals as well.
I think it sounds good in theory, though. To be frank, if you think about Singaporeans as a whole, there are jobs that Singaporeans just don't want to do these days, and that's a real problem. I mean, if you look at the service industry today, a lot of people are from China, and there's so much jobs out there that Singaporeans just don't want to do anymore. Now, you talk about retraining and mindsets. Do you think we can retrain certain Singaporeans used to a certain lifestyle to do something that they're not used to for a lesser pay than before? I don't know if Singaporeans... I think we may have been coddled a little bit already,
I think it's one aspect of it. Yeah. It's quite correct, that mindset is hard to change. But we want to point them, to an equivalent or to at least a moderated, lower expectation. Because the job that you're doing with the high salary that you have, you may not be able to get it again. But if you can then take on a different path, a different profession, for example...
So are you saying lower expectations, is it?
Slightly lower, but with newer skill, you may be able to come back to where you are. Take, for example, we have a shortage of nurses, male, females... and they learn
start taking down notes, professions that you can look at, nurses and all that.
And in line with that as well, it's not just about lower expectations, but just a different mindset. I mean, I was just thinking, this might actually be the best time for companies to start venturing into emerging markets or, unventured territory. But the thing is, are Singaporeans willing to take that step out of their comfort zone? And
they may be prepared, but who they can go to in order to get some assistance. That's important. And if you say that this is an opportunity and explain to them, they do not mind giving it a shot, especially if they have a family to feed. But of course, you look at the young generation, the Gen Y, they have never had an experience of a recession. They never experienced of losing a job. Even if they lose the job, it is a very normal thing, because they say, well, look, I got tired of this job. I just want another job. But what I want to say is that there are vulnerable groups: the educated, the uneducated, and unskilled. And this is the lower part.
That's right. And then so the challenge of companies, local companies, really is then how to balance this, not just in theory. It may sound good in theory, but to just balance this between the dollars and cents, which makes a lot of sense, and the welfare of the average Singaporean, so that no one is left, high and dry.
I think it's a challenge.
It's a challenge.
It's a real challenge.
Yeah, that's right. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We would love to discuss more, but that's about it for Point Blank this evening. So, don't go away, because we've Razor Top 5 up for you up next.